If you want to eat juicy and tender beef ribs like these, then the best way to do it is cook them yourself. Let me show you how it's done.
A big thanks to Typhur for sponsoring this episode.
Full disclosure, this is going to be the first time cooking beef ribs on my new offset smoker, so I'm super excited about that and I want things to go right, so we hooked up with Typhur to make sure that everything goes smooth. Now let's get out the star of the show. Look at that, two beautiful black Angus beef ribs, absolutely freaking gorgeous. So much delicious meat on top of these bones. This is going to be super good. Now normally I would trim off that fat cap that sits on top of this because it also has a little bit of silver skin underneath, and trimming that off will actually take off a lot of the beef ribs. But now I'm cooking this on the offset smoker, and with an offset smoker you have a heat arch of hot air traveling over the beef ribs, which means we're going to be rendering down that fat. And that fat is actually going to be protection for the beef rib, so it's going to be super tender and delicious. And therefore, no need to take it off. But I am going to score it with a knife. By making small incisions, I'm going to help the fat to render down. And then at the spots where I have a thicker fat cap, it's going to render down more easily. And I will be able to get seasoning in the beef ribs. Look at that, all scored up. This is now ready to be seasoned, but we still need to take a look at the back side. Now we have a big membrane sitting at the back, and you can take that off, but I'm gonna leave it on. It's gonna be another layer of protection. Basically, I'm gonna cook the meat in between the bones, the fat, and the membranes, and that will make it taste even better. For my seasoning, I wanna layer up. I want to have as much flavor as I possibly can. So I'm going to use the Texas beef rub. I'm going to put this on all sides, on the top, on the side, and at the bottom. And once I got my first layer of seasoning on, I'm going to put on the second layer of seasoning. With the beef rub, that's going to give me a little bit more color on the beef ribs. It's basically a flavor system that you're building up. And if you got so much beef like this, that's exactly what you want. You want to have loads and loads of flavor to really make it pop. Now I got my beef ribs all seasoned up. It's time to put them on the smoker and start cooking. But what I'm gonna do is I'm also gonna stick in a wireless thermometer to keep an eye on the temperature. And that wireless thermometer is super important, because even though cooking to time will give you great results, cooking to temperature is gonna give you perfect results. And that's why both of these get their own wireless thermometer, so I can keep track of their individual temperature. And that is super important, because even though these are the same cuts, they might cook differently because of their precision on the barbecue, or just because it's a different cow and it will cook a little slower or faster. And to measure the core temperature in these beautiful beef ribs, I'll be using the Typhur Sync. Now you may have noticed I've been using their instant probe thermometer, which is an absolute dream to work with. Beautiful screen, works super well. I even throw this thing in the pool just to make sure that it's waterproof. It is. The Typhur Sync has two wireless thermometer probes, and they both have 6 sensors. 5 sensors to measure the temperature in the beef, and 1 sensor to measure the surrounding temperature in the barbecue. And it will sound the alarm when it's time to take the meat off the barbecue. Installing the Typhur Sync was an absolute breeze. All I had to do is get it out of the package, start it up, connect it to my phone, and the job's done. But the thing that I love most about the Typhur Sync is the range. I can be on the other side of this building and still have connectivity with Bluetooth, or I could do some grocery shopping and still have connectivity through Wi-Fi. And that gives me peace of mind that this thing is keeping check on my food while I'm doing other things. And if you're cooking barbecue with meats like this on an offset smoker, you know what I'm talking about. I'm gonna start it up by putting in some beach splits. Now if you look at the size of these splits and you compare it to the firebox, you can see that we're starting the fire at the beginning of the firebox. And that means the flames will die out long before they hit the smoke chamber. I'm going to stack them up 3 high, put in 2 fire starters at the beginning, light it up, make sure that the vents open on this side, and then I'm going to let the draft do the rest of the work. Now if I want to speed things up, I can open up the smoke chamber, and that will start the fire up faster. But I've got plenty of time, so I'm just gonna let the fire get started and heat up the offset smoker. Once I got my offset smoker at a temperature of around 120 degrees Celsius, which is 240 degrees Fahrenheit-ish, and I can feel that it's warm with my hand on the steel, then it's time to put the beef on. Not before, not before. Only when the steel's hot, because then you got the capacity to open it up, put the beef in without losing any of the heat and needing to start up again. I'm going to place the beef ribs in side by side with the lower point pointing towards the fire and the higher part pointing towards the pipe, and we'll switch it around later on. So we're going to get an even cook and even brown and rendering of fat on all sides of the beef ribs. Of course, I'm going to set my Typhur Sync and make sure that I got a connection. Then I'm going to go into the app and I'm going to set the temperature. And in this case, I want a core temperature of 92 degrees Celsius. Hit start and you can see the temperature shooting up. Well, that is the smoke temperature. We can keep an eye on the temperature in the smoke chamber. We can keep an eye on the temperature in the beef ribs. And all I need to do is just make sure that I keep the fire going with the mixture of beech and oak. 50-50 is my now preferred mix. And that's going to give us the ultimate beefy, smoky combination flavor. One of my ribs is running at 57 degrees Celsius core temperature, and the other one is at 65, which is, well, a rather big difference. And that's kind of interesting, because what would be the difference? What would cause that? And I would love to know. And I can just check that number 1, which is also on the label, is over here. This is running a little bit hotter than this one. And that might have to do with the position of the probe, but it also might have to do with the ribs and the way they sit. But what I'm now going to do to correct that is flip these two around. And both look pretty amazing. We got a beautiful dark bark that we're getting. Take this, flip it around. And we got to make sure with the thermometer, we got to make sure that the whole thermometer's inside the meat. Otherwise it's not reading right. Oh, this is going to be good. There's this little ledge that sits just in the smoke chamber where the firebox comes out, and it kind of directs all the hot air to flow over the meat. Now I'm gonna put a water pan on it. That's going to stable out the temperature. That is mass, and that's going to slowly evaporate, keep the moisture level in the barbecue up while it's smoking, and it's going to stable out the temperature. I haven't used it before because I never felt the need to really use it. We're in a really humid climate. Until I saw that graph going up and down, I thought a little bit more stabilization would be nice. Of course, I can control it a little better, but I also want to step away from the offset smoker. So this might work. I'm going to try it. We'll see if it works for the beef ribs. I think it will be a nice little experiment. It's starting to look good. After about 6 hours of taking it really slow, we're building up that bark that I'm looking for. I got a nice crust, I got a nice color building up, and I like where this is going. Except for the fact when I touch the fat, it's still not to the point where it renders nicely. When I touch it with my finger, it doesn't melt on impact, and that's what I'm looking for. I want it to absolutely melt on the beef ribs. As you can see on the app, the beef ribs are now running more stable, but the temperature needs to go up. I'm gonna take this up to 140 degrees Celsius, melting down the fat, and I'm going to do that by adding more fuel to it. That's it. I'm just getting the warning. 90 degrees Celsius. Remove your food from the barbecue. That is number 1. Let's get it off. Oh, look at that. And of course I'm going to check this with my probe thermometer as well. I don't have to test it for temperature, even though it's spot on. It falls through, literally. It falls in, falls through. That is super, super soft. Doesn't get better than that. And another thing that I'm looking for is the fat render. Is it done? And if I touch it, the fat is literally melting away under my finger. Well, this is done, most definitely. Now, like the Typhur Sync is indicating, is I had to get it out before 90 degrees Celsius because it might go up in temperature even further while it's on the board. So that's a good call. I'm gonna take a look at the other one. Let's see, number 2, almost there. And while I wait for number 2, I'm gonna wrap up number 1. I was using these aluminum trays and I just thought, why not? Oh, it's so soft and tender. Careful now. Why not put it in a stainless steel reusable tray and then put the aluminum foil on top. This is the one thing that stood out again. It's been a total cooking time of over 10 hours, 10 and a half hours. Batteries on this thing, it's still completely full. The base says it's half empty, but the wireless thermometers indicate that they're still full 100%. That means that you can run a cook with these things for maybe 20, 30, 40 hours. And the base device, you can set it on the charger and let it run until infinity. You can see a little bit more white smoke than usual. It's tempting though to eat a little bit of this. First temperature, whoa. Spot on, 90 degrees Celsius, same as the wireless thermometer, and whew, that is soft. It is tempting. It is really, really tempting not just to take a bite out of this and slice into it just to take a sneak peek, but I'm not going to, because I know the reward in the morning is going to be awesome. And I got some people coming over. I want to surprise them with these beef ribs. It's going to be good. While we wait for these beef ribs, I recommend going to the website of Typhur and typing in the code PitmasterX. That's going to give you 10% discount on this beautiful device. And trust me, it's well worth it. I'm going to put this in my oven. See you guys tomorrow. This is what it's all about, the payoff. Let's go. I got a beautiful crust and it's so super soft. I almost don't dare to touch it, it's so soft. Oh, super, super. Insane. To see how nicely that fat rendered, how soft it is. This is so good. Oh, so much more than I dare dream of. I think that's a beautiful end result. I couldn't be more proud of these beef ribs. And now you know how important it actually is to have good temperature control. But is it tasty? Wow, that is good. I'm just gonna slice this off the bone because it's not even real slicing. It's just tapping it off the bone. Slice this up. Juicy meats. It's just it's fall apart tender. Super, super flavorful. I hope you're not watching this starving, because it would upset me personally if I would be looking at that. But just go out, have fun, get your barbecue out and buy a big piece of meat, stick in a wireless thermometer and smoke it to perfection. Of course, we got the discount code for Typhur, so go check that out. Links down below, everything's there. Click on it, buy it, because this thing is freaking awesome. And then I'm gonna see you guys in the next video.